Christabel and I come from the Selectors. We look at books for children and young adults. So today we'll talk about three kinds of books that we want to highlight. Firstly, some wonderfully wordless books, then great books that portray differently abled characters, and also high-interest graphic novels and how they encourage reading and discussion about difficult and bigger issues. For wonderfully wordless books, these books are very good with reluctant readers who may have difficulty reading when they struggle with words. And because these books are mostly just pictures with one or very, very few words on each page or no words at all, it's easy for reluctant readers to get into the story. On the other hand, please note that you may have some proficient readers who may struggle to get into a story without any words. At the same time, these books also facilitate active reading in which children among themselves or children and teachers, even children and parents, can point out details in the pictures together. And readers control the storytelling, so it's really all up to the reader's imagination what kind of story they wish to read and tell. We have 5 books for you on this slide. Hike by Pete Oswald, Aquarium by Cynthia Alonso, and Explorers by Matthew Cordell. These 3 books talk about adventure, about a boy in Hike who goes out into Mother Nature and explores the space around him. Aquarium, a girl meets a fish in the aquarium and they go on adventures together and they discover some of life lessons along the way. Explorers by Matthew Cordell. It's about a boy who has an origami bird that goes missing, and he makes a new friend as he tries to find his missing toy. In Egg by Sue Hendra, what happens when an egg is born in a different way from the rest of the eggs? How does he fit in with them? How does he make friends? In Stormy by Guo Jing, a young puppy is afraid of the human who comes across him, and he is afraid to go out and make friends with her. But when a storm comes along, the two of them bond. In Wallpaper by Thao Lam, a young girl moves into a new house, and she's very shy to make friends with the other young children around her. So she looks under the wallpaper in her home and discovers that it can lead to many other worlds. In Lift, Iris, our protagonist, is in charge of pressing the lift buttons, and when a mysterious button appears one day and leads her to a whole new world, would she want to tell her friends and family about it? And a tour of Hong Kong, 2 children discover Hong Kong from very different ends of the book. One of them starts at the front, while the other starts at the end. And when they meet in the middle, they've discovered many new perspectives along the way. In Field Trip to the Moon by John Hare, a whole class is taken into outer space on a field trip, on a very unusual field trip. But when one of them falls asleep on the moon, who will come back for him? He wakes up to find that his whole class has gone missing. So will he be left there alone? Now we move on to books that portray differently abled characters. Representations of differently abled characters have improved in the past decade, and while many stories are about overcoming disability, we're starting to see stories about people who embrace disability as ability. And as librarians, we need to include these stories on our shelves. These stories show how differently abled characters can reach their full potential. What we're also seeing with these books is that they help to raise awareness and promote inclusiveness to a wider audience. In Dog Driven by Terry Lynn Johnson, our main character, Maureen, is facing worsening eyesight, but she has to go and compete in a dog sled race. So the thing is not even whether or not she can win the race, but whether she can see long enough to complete the race. In Show Me a Sign, there is an island of people who are deaf, and they are comfortable communicating with one another. So deafness is very prevalent in their community, and a researcher comes from outside wanting to find out why so. The problem is that he is so driven to discover the root cause of this particular symptom that he takes one of the islanders as a life experiment and he goes overboard. What will happen to that community? In Optimus Die First, Petula, the main character, suffers from severe anxiety because she blames herself for causing her sister to die from a button that she did not sew on well. So her sister choked to death. What will happen? How will she be able to find herself and forgive herself of something that she didn't do wrong? In a curse so dark and lonely, the wonderful thing about this story is that it's a beautiful retelling of A Beauty and the Beast, but it incorporates a main character, Harper, who comes from the real world, in this case, Washington, D.C., and travels over into the fantastical land where the Beast is. Harper suffers from cerebral palsy, but the Beast is soon about to find out that she's quite a spirited young lady who can hold her own as well. The next two books that I have for you is Pablo and the Noisy Party and Good Night Pablo. These are just two books in a series. All the books in this series are written by authors from on the autism spectrum, and they portray realistic real-life experiences of autistic characters. Just Us by Sonia Sotomayor explores children with many different abilities. Sonia herself has diabetes and she writes about that experience, and she features many different children in her book. And Normal by Nathaniel and Magdalena Newman. This particular book is a memoir between Nathaniel and his mother about Nathaniel, who suffers from severe Treacher-Collins syndrome. When Nathaniel was born, all his mother wanted was for him to have a good life, to be able to run and play with his friends. But she realizes soon that she faces a completely different reality in which she needs to make sure, can Nathaniel eat without a feeding tube? Will he suffer from any consequences if the most basic functions in survival are changed? So this is the book, this is the memoir about how the two of them not only survive, but also thrive. In Some Place to Call Home, this book takes us back into historical fiction into the 1930s when three young children struggle to survive in the face of desperate poverty. What happens when their youngest brother, who has autism, goes missing? Interestingly, the whole town turns out to look for him, but would they find him, and how would they find him? Graphic novels. We're seeing more and more graphic novels featuring differently abled main characters. So in the Oracle Code, this is a retelling of Batgirl, the origin of Batgirl, who is paralyzed waist down, and how she finds her calling as a superhero. In The Phantom Twin, a pair of Siamese twins are separated, but unfortunately one of them loses an arm, a leg, and her sister in the process. So how does she cope then? How does she survive without her sister? In E, this book tells of a young boy who has mutism, and he believes that the colorless king stole his voice, and if he can travel the world to defeat the king, he will get back his voice. Will he succeed? Now we come to our third category, high interest graphic novels. The young adult graphic novel is a new and fast-growing genre, and they are enormously popular and widely accepted. It's a highly visual form of storytelling. It connects with reluctant readers, and the great thing is because more and more authors are writing for the young adults, the material is shaped so that it is age appropriate. What we're seeing also is that some of the big publishing houses are coming up with imprints that target this particular genre, this particular audience in particular. So we have DC graphic novels for young adults. The book that I mentioned earlier, The Oracle Code, is one of their publications. And also Marvel and Scholastic has recently announced that they will launch a new imprint. We have 4 books on this slide. Shadow of the Batgirl is one of the graphic novels that has been put up by DC graphic novels for young adults as well. And it tells the story of Cassandra Cain, who is the protege of Batgirl. In The Only Living Girl by David Gallagher, the world as Z, our main character, knows it is completely and utterly different because her father has destroyed the world. So she needs to figure out what happened, what made the man, her father, the man she knew, become someone who is so diabolical. In Waves by Dango tells the very personal memoir of how he spent his last days with his dying girlfriend and how surfing was the activity that bonded the two of them. And Stepping Stones by Lucy Nisley, Jen, our main character, struggles to figure out who she is in a family that's fast deteriorating. and Dark Matter of Mona Star. This is where we see an intersection also between graphic novels and characters who are differently abled. And in this case, dark matter refers to the overwhelming depression that threatens to crush our heroine. How would she cope? When Stars Are Scattered by Victoria Jamieson and Dancing at the Pity Party are also two other books that we have. For When Stars Are Scattered, it tells the story of a refugee who is growing up in a refugee camp. And this particular story was recounted to our author by a Somali refugee. Dancing at the Pity Party deals with a girl who's facing her mother dying from cancer and how she goes with her to her very first appointment, all the way through how she copes with losing her mother and at the funeral itself. So we also have graphic novels for younger readers. And the first two that we have, the Makers Club Game On and the Magnificent Makers series, which are actually a series of 4 books, look at STEAM topics and how in real life situation, our characters can make use of STEAM lessons to overcome obstacles. In the Hilda series, in this particular book that you see here, Hilda and the Mountain King, Hilda wakes up in the body that is not hers. And how would she be able to then become herself again, right? This particular series I would like to highlight is because it is also a series on Netflix, so it should prove very popular with your students. In Hilo, he is a boy who has crashed onto the earth and he struggles to cope with whatever a human child would consider usual. What's it like to go to school for the very first time? What's it like to make friends? The other problem that they face also is that Hilo wasn't the only thing to crash to earth. What will catch up with them? Thank you very much. I hope that you found the books useful and that you will be able to find something suitable for your school library. Thank you.